Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world where manipulation is often disguised as love and control is mistaken for leadership. But let's be clear, there are those among us who seek not to build, but to dominate. The narcissist is not a leader, nor a mentor, nor a beacon of wisdom. They are a master illusionist, constructing a world in which they are the sun and you are merely one of their orbiting planets. And the moment you refuse to revolve around them, their world begins to crack. So how do you defeat such a person? You don't fight them. You walk away. A narcissist is not self-sustaining. Their sense of worth, control, and even identity depends entirely on the validation they extract from others. They are not independent beings in the way a healthy, well-adjusted person is. They do not possess an internal foundation of self-worth, nor do they operate from a place of intrinsic value. Instead, they construct a carefully crafted image, a fragile yet elaborate illusion that can only be maintained so long as someone is willing to believe in it, reinforce it, and feed it. The narcissist world is, therefore, entirely dependent on the responses they receive from those around them. Now, this is where it becomes critical to understand what happens when you step away. The narcissist, at their core, is a psychological addict. They require supply in the same way that an addict requires a drug. That supply comes in many forms: admiration, submission, obedience, or even conflict. It doesn't matter whether the attention is positive or negative. If you praise them, you fuel their grandiosity. If you argue with them, you still serve their need for significance. If you cry over them, it reassures them that they still have control over your emotional world. This is why a narcissist will provoke you, push your buttons, and create unnecessary conflict. They do not necessarily seek peace or resolution in their interactions. In fact, peace is undesirable to them because it doesn't grant them the emotional leverage they crave. They need to be the center of attention, whether as a hero, a victim, or even a villain. It does not matter to them so long as the spotlight remains firmly on them. So what happens when you refuse to engage? What happens when you withdraw, when you walk away, and when you deny them the very thing they need to sustain their delusion? Their world begins to collapse. This collapse does not happen instantly, nor does it happen gracefully. It begins as disbelief. The narcissist cannot comprehend a world in which you, one of their carefully controlled sources of supply, would simply remove yourself from their grasp. They will try to pull you back in using whatever means necessary. They may suddenly become kind, apologetic, even loving. This is a manipulation tactic known as hoovering, designed to suck you back into the cycle of control. If that fails, they will escalate. They will provoke you, insult you, or attempt to incite a reaction. Their goal is simple: get you to engage, because the moment you react, they regain control. But if you remain firm, if you stay silent, that disbelief turns into panic. The narcissist is forced to confront something they have spent their entire life avoiding: the void within themselves. Without your reactions, without your emotions to feed on, they are left alone with their own thoughts, and those thoughts are unbearable. Beneath their grandiose exterior lies a deep, festering insecurity, a fear that they are, in fact, unworthy, insignificant, and incapable of real connection. But here is the most critical part: they will never admit this to themselves. Instead, they will project. They will tell themselves a different story, one where you were the problem, where you were ungrateful, where you never truly appreciated them. They will rewrite history in a way that allows them to remain the hero or the victim, never the villain. This is not done out of conscious deceit, but as a psychological defense mechanism, a desperate attempt to protect the fragile ego that cannot withstand the reality of rejection. Yet, even in their delusions, the reality remains: you are gone, and without you, the foundation they built their power on begins to crumble. They may seek out new sources of supply, new people to manipulate, new conflicts to create, but they will never truly replace the control they once had over you, because in choosing to walk away, you did something they never expected. You chose yourself over them. And that, in the end, is the silent punishment that dismantles their world. It is not loud. It does not come with grand speeches or dramatic confrontations. It is not about proving a point, nor is it about revenge. It is about absence, an absence that forces them to confront their own emptiness, their own inadequacy, and their own inability to truly hold on to anyone who refuses to be controlled. And so the most powerful thing you can ever do in the face of a narcissist is not to argue, not to fight, and not to plead for their understanding. The most powerful thing you can do is simply walk away, because in your silence, their world collapses under the weight of its own emptiness. Silence is an underestimated force. In a world where people are conditioned to react, respond, and defend themselves at every turn, silence is often mistaken for weakness. But when dealing with a narcissist, silence is not just a passive act. It is an active strategy, a deliberate withdrawal of energy that deprives them of the very thing they rely on, your attention. A narcissist thrives on engagement. It does not matter to them whether that engagement is rooted in love, admiration, anger, or pain. Any response, no matter how justified or rational, feeds their psychological need for control. If you express anger, they interpret it as proof that they still have power over your emotions. If you try to reason with them, they see it as validation that their words and actions still matter to you. Even if you cry, shut down, or lash out in frustration, they take it as a sign that you remain emotionally invested in the dynamic they have created. This is why traditional methods of confrontation fail. Arguing with a narcissist will not lead to resolution, because resolution is not their goal. They do not seek understanding or compromise. They seek dominance. Every interaction is a game of psychological chess, where their only objective is to keep you playing. They will twist your words, gaslight you, manipulate the narrative, and move the goalposts just to keep you engaged. The moment you step into their battlefield, you have already lost, because the battlefield itself was designed to exhaust and disorient you. But silence is something they do not expect. It is something they cannot manipulate. When you refuse to respond, when you choose indifference over engagement, you disrupt the game entirely. The narcissist is left floundering, grasping for a reaction that never comes. It is in this absence of response that their carefully constructed illusion begins to fracture. At first, they will attempt to provoke you. They will push harder, escalating their tactics to draw you back into the cycle. They may try to guilt trip you, paint themselves as the victim, or feign remorse in an attempt to lure you into a conversation. If that fails, they may turn to more aggressive measures, insults, threats, or even public humiliation to force a reaction out of you. Their goal is simple: break your silence, because as long as you remain quiet, they are forced to confront something they cannot tolerate: powerlessness. A narcissist without control is a narcissist in crisis. They have spent their entire lives manipulating situations to ensure that they are never the one left vulnerable. But when you refuse to engage, you take that control away. You shift the power dynamic in a way they are utterly unprepared for. They cannot argue with silence. They cannot manipulate a response that does not exist. They are left with nothing but the emptiness of their own words, their own tactics, and their own crumbling sense of importance. What makes silence so effective is that it forces a narcissist to face themselves. Without the constant distraction of conflict, without an external target to project their insecurities onto, they are left alone with the very thing they fear most: their own mind. Beneath their grandiosity and bravado lies a deep, gnawing void, a space they have spent their entire lives trying to escape. They rely on others to fill that void, to validate their sense of superiority, to give them a sense of purpose through control. But silence denies them that escape. It forces them into a confrontation with their own inadequacy, a battle they are ill-kept to fight. This is why walking away in silence is the most effective form of resistance. It is not about proving them wrong or exposing their lies. It is about removing yourself from their game entirely. The moment you stop reacting, you become untouchable. You take away their ability to manipulate your emotions, dictate your reality, or define your self-worth. And in doing so, you dismantle the very foundation upon which their illusion is built. The narcissist will try to convince you that silence is a sign of weakness, that by refusing to engage, you are running away. But the truth is that silence requires more strength than any argument ever could. It is an act of profound self-discipline, an assertion of boundaries that says, I will not be a pawn in your game. And that, in the end, is what truly dismantles their world. Not a loud, dramatic confrontation, not a desperate attempt to make them understand, but the quiet, unwavering certainty that you no longer care. Because in the absence of your reaction, their power ceases to exist. When you disengage from a narcissist, you do more than just remove yourself from their immediate influence. You begin the process of reclaiming your identity. For so long, your sense of self may have been shaped by their words, their expectations, and their manipulations. You may have found yourself questioning your own reality, doubting your emotions, and adjusting your behavior in an endless effort to appease them. This is the slow erosion of the self, the subtle but devastating effect of prolonged exposure to someone who does not see you as a person, but as an extension of their own need for control. Walking away is not just an escape, it is an act of reconstruction. It is the moment you begin to strip away the layers of conditioning and remember who you were before the narcissist imposed their version of reality onto you. This is not an easy process. When you step away from someone who has dictated so much of your emotional landscape, you may initially feel lost, uncertain, or even empty. This is because for so long your emotional world revolved around their reactions, whether you were anticipating their approval, avoiding their criticism, or trying to navigate their unpredictable moods. The silence after walking away can feel unfamiliar, even unsettling. But this silence is where healing begins. For the first time, you are no longer reacting, you are choosing. You are no longer defining yourself through someone else's distorted perception of you. You are no longer filtering your thoughts and emotions through the lens of their approval or rejection. And in that space, you begin to reconnect with your authentic self, the person who existed before the manipulation, before the self-doubt, before the endless cycle of trying to prove your worth to someone incapable of valuing you. Rebuilding yourself after narcissistic abuse requires patience because the damage was never inflicted all at once. It was gradual, insidious, and deeply ingrained. You may need to unlearn behaviors that once kept you emotionally safe in their presence. People-pleasing, over-apologizing, suppressing your own needs in order to maintain peace. These survival mechanisms, while necessary in a toxic environment, no longer serve you once you are free. In fact, they keep you tethered to a reality that no longer exists. True disengagement means not just physically walking away, but mentally and emotionally reclaiming your autonomy. It means setting boundaries without guilt. It means recognizing that you do not have to explain or justify your decision to anyone, least of all to the narcissist who conditioned you to believe that your worth was dependent on their validation. It means accepting that healing is not linear, that some days will feel empowering while others will bring unexpected waves of self-doubt. This is normal. This is part of the process of deprogramming yourself from the mindset they instilled in you. One of the most powerful realizations you will have during this journey is that your value was never dependent on them. The narcissist did not choose you because you were weak. They chose you because you had qualities they lacked. Your empathy, your resilience, your ability to love deeply. These are the very things they sought to control and diminish, not because they despised them, but because they envied them. They could never truly possess these qualities themselves, so instead they sought to exploit them in you. And this is why your greatest act of defiance is not revenge, not proving them wrong, but becoming whole again without them. The narcissist's greatest fear is irrelevance. Their greatest insecurity is knowing that the person they tried so hard to break is capable of thriving without them. And so by disengaging and focusing on your own growth, you are delivering the ultimate consequence. You are proving that their control was never as absolute as they wanted you to believe. Healing from narcissistic abuse is not just about moving on. It is about becoming more than you ever thought possible. It is about using the pain as a catalyst for transformation, about forging an identity that is stronger, wiser, and no longer susceptible to manipulation. It is about stepping into a version of yourself that the narcissist never wanted you to discover, because that version is free. And that is what truly dismantles their world. Not confrontation, not seeking closure, but rising from the ashes of their manipulation and becoming someone they can no longer reach, no longer control, and no longer define. A narcissist's world is not built on truth, it is built on illusion. Every part of their identity is carefully curated not to reflect reality, but to maintain control. They craft an image of superiority, power, and infallibility, projecting confidence and dominance to those around them. But beneath that carefully constructed facade lies something far more fragile: insecurity, fear, and an overwhelming sense of emptiness. A narcissist cannot afford to confront these things, so they create a world where they never have to. Their illusion is sustained through the people they manipulate. They surround themselves with individuals who reflect back the version of themselves they want to believe in. If they see themselves as powerful, they will seek out those who are submissive. If they see themselves as intelligent, they will seek those who will unquestioningly affirm their superiority. Every person in their life serves a function to uphold the reality they have created for themselves. And as long as those people continue to play their roles, the illusion remains intact. But what happens when someone refuses to play along? What happens when one of the carefully placed pieces in their world walks away? The illusion begins to crack. At first, the narcissist does not acknowledge the damage. They cannot afford to. Instead, they go into denial, convincing themselves that your departure means nothing, that you were never that important to begin with. They may mock your absence, downplay your worth, and tell themselves and others that they are unaffected. This is not because they do not feel the loss, but because admitting that you mattered would shatter the illusion of control they so desperately need to maintain. But the damage has already been done. Your absence creates a void they cannot ignore. The roles they assigned you, whether as a source of admiration, conflict, or submission, are now empty, and that emptiness begins to eat away at the structure of their reality. The narcissist is forced to confront something they cannot tolerate: the realization that they are not as powerful as they believed. If they were truly as dominant, as charismatic, as indispensable as they pretended to be, you would have never left, but you did. And that simple act undermines the very foundation of their carefully constructed world. This is why they often react with rage or desperation when someone they controlled decides to walk away. They may try to pull you back in, not out of love or remorse, but because they need to restore their world to the way it was. They need you to return to your assigned role so they can continue to avoid the truth they refuse to face. If kindness does not work, they may resort to cruelty, insults, or public humiliation. Anything to force a reaction from you. Because as long as you respond, they can still convince themselves that they matter, that they still hold power over you. But if you do not return, if you remain silent, the cracks in their illusion grow wider. The reality they have tried so hard to avoid starts to seep through. They begin to realize that they are not invincible, that their control is not absolute, and that the world will not bend to their will forever. This is when they start to fall apart. Without someone to reflect their desired self-image back to them, the narcissist is left alone with the truth of who they are. And the truth is something they cannot bear. They may frantically seek out new sources of validation, throwing themselves into new relationships, new friendships, or new social circles in an attempt to rebuild what was lost. But deep down, they know that someone saw through them, that someone had the strength to walk away. And that knowledge lingers, chipping away at their illusion long after you are gone. This is why walking away is so powerful. It is not just about freeing yourself. It is about forcing the narcissist to face a reality they have spent their entire lives running from. It is about proving in the most undeniable way possible that they do not have the power they think they do. And once the illusion crumbles, there is nothing left to sustain them. They are left standing in the ruins of a world they built on lies, forced, perhaps for the first time, to confront the emptiness that has always existed within them. When you walk away from a narcissist, you are not just making a decision to remove yourself from their control. You are forcing them to face the one thing they cannot endure: irrelevance. A narcissist's entire existence depends on their ability to influence, manipulate, and control the people around them. They do not simply want attention, they need it. It is the oxygen that sustains their sense of superiority and keeps their fragile self-impeached intact. For as long as you are engaging with them, whether through love, admiration, fear, or anger, you are feeding them. Even negative emotions sustain them because they reaffirm their importance in your world. If they can make you cry, they still have power over you. If they can make you defend yourself, they still control the conversation. If they can make you question your reality, they still own space in your mind. Every interaction, no matter how hostile, confirms to them that they matter. But when you choose to walk away, when you refuse to engage, when you no longer acknowledge their existence, you do something that terrifies them more than anything else. You make them invisible. A narcissist cannot tolerate being ignored. To be unseen, to be insignificant, to be forgotten, these are the things they fear most because they strip away the illusion of power they have spent their lives cultivating. If people stop reacting to them, what are they left with? Who are they without an audience? At first, they will refuse to believe it. They will tell themselves that you are just trying to get their attention, that your silence is temporary, that you will come back once you realize how much you need them. They may try to bait you into responding by provoking you, by spreading lies, by pretending to be the victim. If they can get you to react, even for a moment, they can reassure themselves that they still hold relevance in your world. But if you hold firm, if you give them nothing, the reality starts to sink in. They have lost control. And this realization is unbearable for them. Narcissists do not experience loss the way normal people do. When healthy individuals lose a relationship, they grieve, they reflect, they grow. But a narcissist does not introspect because doing so would require them to acknowledge fault, and their entire identity is built on the belief that they are never wrong. So instead of processing the loss, they spiral. They may lash out, attempting to destroy your reputation in an effort to regain control. If they cannot have your admiration, they will settle for your fear. If they cannot make you love them, they will try to make you hate them, because hatred still keeps them relevant. But what they cannot handle is indifference. Indifference tells them they no longer matter. Indifference confirms that they have lost their hold over you, and this is what truly dismantles them. When you stop responding, when you refuse to acknowledge their presence, they are left alone with their own thoughts. And this is where the true punishment lies, not in confrontation, not in revenge, but in the silence that forces them to face the truth they have always avoided. They are not special, they are not invincible, and they are not in control. But this punishment is not about them. It is about you. It is about reclaiming your energy, your peace, your identity. It is about no longer allowing them to dictate how you feel, what you think, or how you see yourself. It is about finally understanding that their opinion of you was never a reflection of your worth. It was only ever a projection of their own emptiness. Walking away is the greatest act of self-liberation. It is the moment you stop living in their world and start creating your own. A world where you are not defined by their approval or controlled by their manipulation. A world where you are free, and nothing, absolutely nothing, is more devastating to a narcissist than knowing they no longer exist in yours. The greatest power you hold over a narcissist is the ability to walk away. Not with anger, not with resentment, not with a desperate need to make them understand, because they never will, but with silence. Silence is the ultimate punishment, the one thing they cannot manipulate, the one force that dismantles their carefully constructed illusion. When you disengage, you do more than just remove yourself from their control. You reclaim your identity. You shatter their illusion of power. You force them to confront their own irrelevance, a truth they have spent their entire lives avoiding. But most importantly, walking away is not about them. It is about you. It is about your freedom, your healing, and your ability to live a life no longer dictated by their manipulation. It is about proving, not to them, but to yourself, that you were always stronger than they wanted you to believe. And that is the true victory. Not revenge, not proving them wrong, but becoming untouchable, free, whole, and no longer trapped in their game. Because when you stop playing, they lose. Every time. When you allow someone to offer you only words without action, you are accepting a hollow version of love. You are placing your happiness in the hands of someone who is unwilling or unable to truly care for you in the way you need. You are settling for a fantasy rather than seeking a reality that will bring you genuine joy and fulfillment. Real love is proven, not promised. It is felt in the way someone prioritizes you, in the way they make time for you, in the way they consistently show up, even when it is inconvenient. If a person is not proving their love through their actions, then their words mean nothing. And the sooner you recognize this, the sooner you can free yourself from relationships that are holding you back from the kind of love you truly deserve. You deserve a love that is consistent, unwavering, and deeply rooted in action. Do not settle for someone who only calls when they need you, who only speaks of love but never demonstrates it. Instead, choose to walk away from inconsistency, from empty promises, from relationships that leave you feeling unfulfilled. Because when the right person comes along, you will not have to question their love. It will be evident in everything they do. Love is not a mystery to be solved, nor is it a game of patience where you wait for someone to finally realize your worth. Love is clear, intentional, and proven through action. If a man truly loves you, he will show you, not just in fleeting moments of affection, not just in late-night calls, but in the way he prioritizes you, respects you, and commits to you fully. If he only reaches out when it is convenient for him, if he keeps you in a cycle of uncertainty, if his words are not matched by his actions, then he is not loving you. He is keeping you as an option. And every moment you spend waiting for him to change is a moment you take away from yourself, from your own growth, from the possibility of real love. Your time, your energy, your heart, these are precious things. Do not waste them on someone who does not cherish them. Do not settle for inconsistency, for half love, for a relationship that leaves you questioning your worth. Instead, choose yourself. Choose a life where you are valued, where you do not have to beg for attention, where you are not an afterthought. Because the right person will not leave you wondering where you stand. They will not make excuses. They will not disappear when things get hard. They will be there, fully and completely. Until then, refuse to accept anything less. You deserve a love that is real, steady, and unwavering. And that love will never require you to beg for it.